this morning will be page 176. Page 176. We'll hold that song, and Jeff will have our communion meditation at this time.
Here kind of shows the contrast, I think, between like the New and the Old Covenants here in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 18 through 29. It says, "You have not come to a mountain that can be touched, and that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to a trumpet blast, or to such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word be spoken to them, because they could not bear what was commanded. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned. The sight was so terrifying that Moses said, 'I am trembling with fear.' But you have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, the city of the living God. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God, the judge of all men, to the spirits of righteous men made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. See to it that you do not refuse him who speaks. If they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, how much less will we, if we turn away from him who warns us from heaven? At that time his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, 'Once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens.' The words 'once more' indicate the removal of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful, and so worship God acceptably, with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire." Here in Hebrews, we can see the huge difference between the contrast of the Old and New Covenant, the Old and the New Way. In 18 through 21, it talks about how terrifying it must have been there for the inauguration of the Old Covenant. Even Moses was trembling with fear. And then in 20 through 24, we can see the joyful difference of the new and better covenant, the covenant bought and paid for with the body and blood of Jesus, our Lord and Savior. The rest of the chapter warns us to listen and to obey the call. Just as he once shook the earth, he will a second time shake the earth and heavens. But we belong to a kingdom that cannot be shaken or destroyed. Let's be thankful and give worship to our God and Savior today and always.
Thank you, Jeff. 176. King of my life, I crown thee now. Thine shall the glory be. Lest I forget thy thorn-crowned brow, lead me to Calvary. Lest I forget Gethsemane, lest I forget thine agony, lest I forget thy love for me, lead me to Calvary. Show me the tomb where thou wast laid, tenderly mourned and wept. Angels in robes of white arrayed, guardest thee whilst thou slept. Lest I forget Gethsemane, lest I forget thine agony, lest I forget thy love for me, lead me to Calvary. Let me, like Mary, through the gloom, come with a gift to thee. Show to me now, empty tomb, lead me to Calvary. Lest I forget Gethsemane, lest I forget thine agony, lest I forget thy love for me, lead me to Calvary. May I be willing, Lord, to bear daily my cross for thee, even thy cup of grief to share. Thou hast borne all for me. Lest I forget Gethsemane, lest I forget thine agony, lest thy love for me lead me to Calvary. Father in heaven, Lord, we thank you for this time in our service. We come and we focus exclusively upon the gift that you've given to us. We pray that as we gather together in like mind and like purpose, help us to take our minds and our thoughts back to what that cost your Son as he went to the cross. Denied his physical desire to avoid the cross, but went to the cross to die, knowing that that was the only sacrifice for mankind, the only sacrifice you would accept to cover man's sins. We pray that as we stand here before you today, we would look at our lives as you see us. Help us to search our hearts and see where we have fallen short. Desire, Lord, to please you in every way we possibly humanly can. Help us to be forgiven of where we have fallen short. Desire that forgiveness. Desiring to repent and do better in areas that are not pleasing to you. We pray that as we look at the sacrifice and look at our lives, it would give us focus for our future and a desire to walk with you always through the days of our life, where we can see you one day and live with you eternally. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Go ahead and have your communion at this time.
Good morning, everyone. Glad we could be here. Hope you had a bang-up time yesterday, 4th of July. And we don't want to forget why we have that day, because we have many, many blessings, because we live in the most wonderful country maybe ever was. Problems, yes, but wonderful, yes, as well. 572 will be our closing song today, 572. Glad to see Leonard up and about. Looks like he's motivating pretty good, so we're glad for that. And we're all just so thrilled yesterday to see Charles being baptized into Christ. That That was a great, great, great time. And David assisted in that. Appreciate him doing that. So pray for Charles as he grows in Christian life. He's got a lot of potential. He really does. And God can use him in a really, really good way. Remember seeing Awesome God up here a few years back and all that kind of stuff. I got a lot of wonderful memories when we talked about that yesterday. Vanessa is redoing our address list and birthday list, so if you know somebody that's not on there, you might add them, or if somebody's date's wrong or phone number's wrong or whatever, so trying to keep that up. It's an ongoing thing. As you know, people move and change and do different things, so we want as many people that we can put on there as we possibly can to remember and honor them as well. Kathy Terrell is having quite a bit of trouble with her leg, and if you get a chance, it'd be nice just to send her a card, kind of encourage her. I think she would do well with that. So if you have an address list, you should have their address. If not, hope there's one around that you can check out. Vanessa has our special number this morning. We appreciate that. Thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate that. Did you know all that was in that song? Sung that a long time, but we didn't know maybe that was all there. I was in a district courtroom in Davenport because of a friend. This friend had been born in Thailand, and his father had been a important man in the government. But his father packed up his family and sent them to America because he wanted them to have the privileges that only America could give them. His name was Comcrit. And I'd say, is that, he said, well, that's kind of the way you're supposed to say it, but I'm not that nationality, and so I couldn't never say it quite right. Concret Kosovatna, something like that. We called him Guy. That'd be a lot better. Guy had come to the United States at 3 years of age, and I know was naturalized about age 20. He was so proud of that. We stood there, and he promised his faithfulness to America, to the Constitution, to uphold her, to not tear it down in any way, because it was a great privilege for him to be an American. He didn't turn his back on Thailand, because when we got done, we went out to a Thai restaurant and had Thai food. So, we're all American, but he realized the blessings that we have here in our country. In the book of Acts, chapter 22, the Apostle Paul talks about a blessing that he had, and he received, well, actually maybe saved his life because of what he claimed in this account. You see, Paul had been in the castle, and they were trying to figure out why he had been arrested in the temple. And Paul said, I didn't do anything. Criminals say that? I'm not innocent. I didn't do that. Somebody else did that. They heard that 100 times. I'd imagine no policeman has ever fallen for the idea that, yeah, he's innocent, just because he said so. But Paul said he wasn't, and he really wasn't. Well, he couldn't get anything out of him, and so the captain decided to just beat him. That's kind of a horrible way to try to get the truth out of somebody, just beat them. They may confess something they haven't even done, in fact. So it tells us this in verse 24. The captain commanded him to be brought into the castle and bade that he should be examined by scourging. Leather thongs with bones and metal tied into it, that he might know whereof they cried so against him. And as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, Is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? You ought to be doing this. Now, this is nationality. I have some rights here. They were precious rights. I'm a Roman. You can't do this, really, can you? Well, here's what the response was. When the centurion heard that, he went to the chief captain and said, Take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. The chief captain said, Tell me, art thou a Roman? He said, Yes. The chief captain answered, With a great sum obtained I this freedom. Paul said, But I was freeborn. Now, the Apostle Paul actually belonged to 3 countries. He was a Jew, born in Tarsus, so being a Jew, he was part of the Jewish nation. And he had all the privileges to be a Jew that would be involved in going to the temple and talking to the Jews and having opportunity to spread the gospel among them. Gentiles couldn't do that. He was being charged with taking a Gentile into the temple, which they thought was a horrible thing. He was a Roman, as we know here, but he was also a citizen of the kingdom of God. Now, that's all good. Each one has different things to give to you, but at the same time, each one costs you something. You had to pay the temple tax, you pay the Roman tax, and you give to God what belongs to God, and what Caesar is Caesar's. So, we want to talk today a little bit about the blessings we have about being an American. Maybe we don't realize that. Now the proper thing is tear it down, burn it up, get rid of it, slam it, it's all wrong. Now when it came to the Israelites, or the Romans, or the church, do you think any of those were perfect as far as the members and citizens were concerned? Have you ever been in a perfect church? If you have been, it probably wasn't when you walked in, was it? Because I'm not perfect, and no, neither are you. But we love the church. Our government, is it perfect? Is everything about America wonderful and great? Not necessarily. But there's a psalm that says, Lord, mend our every flaw, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. That's the way it ought to be. Were the Romans perfect? Oh, no. I will read about some of the things Paul said to do for them, and we say, how could he say that with the Romans being the way they were? And of course, the Jews, just in the next chapter, Paul comes to the courtroom, and Paul said, I've always lived in a good conscience. And the priest said, smack him. So they slapped him upside of the head. Now, what do you think kind of a deal that would be in a judge court today? Judges don't just slap him. Well, you could get all kind of trouble. That'd be a mistrial right off the bat. But it was okay to do that. Paul said, you're just a whited wall. You're a hypocrite, in other words. And they said, he's the priest. You don't talk to priests, even they slap you like that. Now that is a different concept than we would have. We have more freedom to just say what we want to say. And Paul said, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was the high priest. Not that he said, I don't know the act like it. He'd been gone. He came back. He was arrested. He didn't know what was going on. So here are things that we want to talk about today because we overlook them. We grumble. We complain. America has a lot of faults and problems. They need to be corrected. That's no doubt about that. But there's the good side that we need to understand. First of all, let's look at the blessings we have. We have abundance. There's no nation that has had the abundance that we've had. I mean, it's just everything you might mention, everything that you might want is somewhere in America. And I was kind of surprised, but last year we finally reached oil independence. We've got enough oil reserves to take care of ourselves. Nearly everything else too, by the way. Enough food. We've got enough food and soybeans and wheat and all that to export it. We've always been like that for years and years. We kind of feed the world. And farmers don't get really the blessing that they need because of all that they do. We have mines, we have gold, we have copper, we have silver, and I grew up in Montana next to, well, a few miles away from, the richest hill on earth. Anaconda, copper, mined that. It was copper. Anaconda was way up by a glacier park, and it was always called the richest hill on earth. Imagine after they mined it a while, it probably wasn't anymore. But that's America. When was the last time you went to a store and you wanted something and they just absolutely didn't have it, and nobody has it? You had to line up and get well, except for toilet paper. I know that was a problem, but I mean, you got it kind of long after that, but you think of America. I've known of people who came to America and they were just amazed, walked into a supermarket and they were told by the Russian agents, this is all a ruse. This really isn't real. It's just something to see to make you think that capitalism is good. But we walk into that and here's all the fruits and vegetables and all the canned goods and everything we want and push our cart around, and we have an abundance. We have so much abundance that Americans have a little more abundance around their middle as well. We have a great thing. We have a wonderful land. But you know, it didn't happen overnight. Those poor Pilgrim people got blown off a course and they landed in Massachusetts in the wintertime. How would you go anything in Massachusetts in the wintertime? I mean, it's don't. It's cold. And those 103 people huddled together, some in the ship and some in the little house they built, and half of them died that very winter. Couldn't even bury them. It was too hard to bury them in the ground, so they just kind of stacked them away and did it in the spring. Got down to where one time they had 4 kernels of corn per meal, trying to make it last. And then God sent Squanto and others who said, I can tell you how to do that. I show how to plant stuff. I show where to catch game. And you know what? In 2 years, guess what they went from? 4 kernels of corn to Thanksgiving. They had the right idea. We have an abundance. We are so thankful for what we have, but we're thankful for who else? The Indians. Early America was really not too prejudiced when you think about it, because the Indians were their very good friends. Come on over. They had about a week celebration. Indians brought some venison, and they had other things, and they celebrated, and they raced, and I suppose the Indians outran them. I don't know, but they had little games and stuff that they did. We live in abundant land. God can make abundance. He told the Israelites, he said, you follow me and you be with me, and I'll give you a land that's filled with milk and honey. Well, it's more than milk and honey, but that's telling us of abundance, of great things that they had. God has blessed his land. He told Abraham he's going to bless him and make his name great, and all nations of the earth will be blessed because of him. But not only that, Americans have also shared what they have. We have been, and we always are, as people, a little selfish. But some years ago, I think on our 200th birthday, a Canadian wrote this excerpt. I won't read the whole thing. It's a little longer than we can have time for, but, you know, people diss America. Who was the first one on the scene in America, in a disaster? America. Who was the first one to put the world back together again after World War II? Who's ever heard of defeating Japan, then putting Japan back on the map? Who's ever heard about defeating Germany, then rebuilding Germany? And so on it goes. The Marshall Plan, the Lend-Lease Plan, whatever a country's ever done, like America has done, to help people who are in need around the world. So here's what this man says. He says, as long as 60 years ago, when I first started to read newspapers, I read all the floods of the Yellow River and the Yangtzes. Who rushed in with men and money to help? The Americans did. They have helped control floods on the Nile, the Amazon, the Ganges, and the Niger. Last spring, the rich bottomland of Mississippi was underwater, and no foreign land sent even $1. If that had been in China, if that had been in some other country, we would have done that. Germany, Japan, and to a lesser extent Britain and Italy were lifted out of the debris of World War II by Americans who poured billions of dollars and forgave other billions of dollars of debt. None of these countries is paying even the interest in the remaining debts of the United States. I think at one time, a few years ago, somebody sent America $1 million, and they were all flabbergasted. Somebody else had said, here, thank you for what you've given us years ago, and they wanted to help out. But you know, that's human nature, isn't it? If you had rich old money bags, you just kind of take advantage of them. I don't know if you remember Orphan Annie, Daddy Warbucks. He would show up every once in a while. Poor Orphan Annie, she didn't have much, but Daddy Warbucks would show up. He was rich, and they just kind of let him pay everything. But that's not good for us. It's not good for America either. Yes, we help, but we should help one another. When the franc was in danger of collapsing in 1956, it was the Americans who propped it up, and then their reward was to be insulted and swindled on the streets of Paris. I saw it myself. When the distant cities are hit by earthquakes, the United States that hurries in to help them. Nicaragua and the recent examples. Last spring, 59 American communities were flattened by tornadoes. Nobody helped. And America's a bad place, they said. Burn it down. Well, that's not what we want to do, burn it down. And is that what you do at your house? If you had a fight with your wife or husband, just burn down the house, what you do? If you had trouble in the church, you just, let's just shoot the members, that's what you do? No. You say, well, we've got a problem, let's fix it, let's do something about it. We live in an abundant land, and we need to understand that. Secondly, we live in a land of opportunity. What is the chance that you or I or any Englishman, for that matter, could be king of England? Well, there's Charles, he's in the way, and William's in the way, and Henry's in the way, and I don't know who all else. The idea is that you don't get to be king of England just because you deserve it or you're the best man for the job, like maybe the president we hope will be. But you know what? You have to be part of the family. It's not really very free. Now, there's one way in the Bible that you got to be, in history for that matter, you got to be king, and that is if you killed the king ahead of you. And you just wiped out all their family, and then you got to be king. Till somebody else wiped your family out, then they got to be king. That's kind of the way that worked out. Not good, was it? We live in a much better society where people hopefully are honest in their vote, and we vote in the man that we think is going to do the right thing and pray for him. We have opportunity. Where else in the world would you see a man like Lincoln, who had basically an axe and hardly anything else, go from poverty to being the most powerful person in America? How would that happen anywhere else? It probably would not. We have opportunity. You can do what you want to do, be what you want to be, and anybody can go to school, do whatever they want to do. If they want to do it bad enough, and you see people like that, they want to have an education bad enough, and they'll get it because we have the opportunity to do so. Joseph had an opportunity, and he took it, and God blessed him. Mordecai and Esther the same. The third thing we have by way of blessing is freedom. Are you worried about you're going to be arrested on the way home and put in jail for no reason just because somebody didn't like you? Because you said something in church and so they're going to cut your head off like they did John the Baptist? Well, that's going to happen. Not that it couldn't because they're wicked people, but that's not likely to happen in America because we have freedom. Freedom that we've been guaranteed by the first Bill of Rights, the first 10 Bill of Rights. Freedom to assemble. We have the right to be here. We have the right to our religion. We have the right to guns. We have the right to a lot of different things that we have been guaranteed, but people want to take them one by one away. We have to defend that and appreciate the freedom that we have. And I say, oh, well, it'll always be there. It's not necessarily so. Some men have said freedom is only one generation away from tyranny. Because if you don't pay attention, you'll lose your rights. And people would like to do that, take that away from them. I used to take my students to the synagogue in Ottumwa. I don't think they even operate anymore. Not enough Jewish people to have a service anymore in Ottumwa. But anyway, Mrs. Dreyfus would always take us through and talk to us about it. She was Hungarian. And you really had to listen a little bit to hear what she had to say because she had that Hungarian accent, which was kind of neat, actually. And she'd talk about, every once in a while, Hitler and the Nazis and the freedom that she didn't have and the escape to come to, guess where? America. That's where she wanted to go. There was a wall that was built later right between streets of Germany, east and west. And the president stood there one day and he said, tear down this wall. Well, why? So that people could be free. And surprisingly, the wall came down. I don't remember how many it was, but I've read about people who got sheets and jumped out of buildings and hoped they could fly over the wall. And of course, they got machine gunned down. There was a place there where they cleared out houses so they could watch where people, kind of like an aisle here, so you couldn't get hid behind houses, and the shoot usually went through. Can you imagine trying to escape from America? And I did hear the other day that Mexico's down the border. You can't go to Mexico anymore. Did you know that? You got too much virus. They don't want you over there. That's kind of amazing that Mexico's now shut down the border for a while for Americans. But we have freedom. It's a wonderful land in which we live. We can do so many different things, and that's why our Pilgrim Fathers came to do that. But secondly, and maybe even more importantly, what's our responsibility? Christians are citizens of the land. Now, there are certain religious people that don't want anything to do with their country. Certain cults, I don't want to vote. We don't want to salute the flag. We don't want to do anything like that because we're not want to be part of a worldly society. But the Bible talks differently from that. The Bible tells Christians what to do, and many times the Christians don't do their part, then that won't be done, and we have a suffering in America because the right thing is not done. Remember what the man said one time? Things go wrong because good people say nothing and let it go. Well, what are we supposed to do? Well, first of all, we're supposed to respect our land. Now, the book of Romans, chapter 13, is a passage that is so far away from the thought of Americans today that it's just even real. Listen to what it says, 13:1. Let every soul be subject to the higher power. What color do you suppose that's supposed to be? Black? White? Chinese? Japanese? If you're an American, what are you supposed to be doing according to the Bible? Subject to the higher authorities. Now, that's not all there is to it, but without authority, we have nothing. Now, I got to be subject to the police? Yeah. To the president? He's not in my party. That doesn't matter. I don't think Nero was in Paul's party either, by the way. He was a vicious man. Nero, who Paul is talking about in honoring, was a man who would take Christians and tie them to stakes and put gasoline or some kind of a fluid on them and set them on fire so he could see to eat his dinners in his parties. Can you respect him? You respect authority. I like it the way that Mark Twain said, we always are loyal to the government, always loyal to our nation, but loyal to our government when it deserves it. You see the difference. We can't just represent everything's all right that they do, but we have a land. I was traveling through Centerville the other day, and I noticed a sign I hadn't seen before. It said, notice, reserved for Nittany Lions only. Others will be towed. If you know what a Nittany Lion is, it's the name for Penn State University. Now, if you know anything about Penn State University, you know they went through a very, very horrible moral crisis not very long ago. But here's somebody, I'm loyal to my university. Well, what about Iowa, University of Iowa? They're having hard times, aren't they? I mean, they apparently pick on black people, according to what we hear. So we're just going to forget and not, if we have a loyalty to something, what if your kids do the wrong thing? You just kind of throw them away? No, we have a loyalty to a country, to a land, even when it doesn't do good, but we have a responsibility to make it better. That's the point, I think, that we need to understand. Listen to what else he said. There is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. And we're not busting stuff up and burning it down. How does this work out? It's not fitting in. Whoso therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. You throw that Molotov cocktail or use something like that, you load up your car with all the stuff you've taken out of somebody's store, you have just violated God. You didn't get free stuff. You stole from God, actually, and they don't realize that. Of course, the problem is people aren't being taught what God has for them to understand. They resist, so receive to themselves damnation. Rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. If they are, they need to be punished and need to be corrected. Without be afraid of the power, do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. Usually something goes on, somebody's been doing wrong, and then they blame the cops for it. Well, if you hadn't done that, broken into that store or tried to do whatever was wrong, you probably wouldn't have been in trouble in the first place. Hard to imagine how people can think that way. He, the law, is the minister of God to thee for good. If thou do that which is evil, be afraid. And he that beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the avenger of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that does evil. Therefore you must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but for conscience sake. Why do you do good? So you won't get caught? That's the only reason I don't rob a bank, because I might get caught? Or because if I robbed a bank or did something like that, I'd feel bad because I'm violating God's law. Well, there's two reasons why I don't do that. So there's a respect. The Bible also says in 1 Timothy chapter 2 that prayer and supplication should be made for all men. There's nobody you've ever seen in your whole life you can't pray for. I don't care what they are, what they're like, what color they are, how bad they are, how good they are. They all need prayer, according to Paul. Especially says for kings and those in authority. Kings have a special temptation to be violent. They have a temptation to be arrogant. They have temptation to be hard-handed. And so we got to pray for them, that God will bless and help them to be what they should be. Also, the Bible teaches us that we should speak up. When you read the Bible, you're from beginning to end talking about people who respected their leaders, but spoke up. The Apostle Paul, you remember, I respect you. You're like Agrippa. He said, Agrippa, you are a great man. You're just a wonderful person. You helped our land. And he had. But then when Agrippa said, you almost would make a Christian out of me, Paul said, I wish you would be one altogether. Except these chains, you should be like me. Festus was trying to figure out what it was, and Paul was told, he's crazy. He said, no, these are words of of soberness and nobleness. When Felix was asking things, Paul preached about righteousness, temperance, judgment to come. We still are speaking out against evil, but we're speaking out respectfully as we should. That's part of what a Christian is. By way of America, we have the opportunity and privilege to do that. Jeremiah spoke. Jeremiah got in a lot of trouble. They threw him in a pit. So he could just die down there. There'd be no food down there. But a friend thought about him. They pulled him back out, and Jeremiah kept telling him about the king. And he wrote to the king how he should be living. The king took that letter and he looked at it and he took his penknife and he just cut it up and threw it in the fire. And the Lord said, write it again. But this time, it won't be given to him. It'll be something to be on record against him, and he will pay for what he has done. Speak up at what you need to do. And finally, number 4, our responsibility is to live righteous. This is not a large group of people, but what effect can it have upon the whole world, or upon Iowa, or upon our county? I don't know how big Sodom and Gomorrah was. It never tells us that, but they were supposedly good-sized cities for the time. When Abraham got to talking, he got it whittled down to 10 people. If there are 10 righteous people in Sodom, will you save it? And the answer from God was, I will. Now, there's way more than 10 here. You could save 2 or 3 or 4 cities. There'd be enough people here to save Des Moines, or maybe all of Iowa, for that matter. It's interesting, isn't it, that God looks down upon his people, and a small portion of the citizens that follow God are enough for him to say, I'll just save the people, I'll be merciful upon them, and I won't destroy them. But God couldn't find 10 in Sodom. He had Lot and Lot's wife and 2 kids, and that was about it, and couldn't even make up 10. But if there had been 10, they'd been saved. You see, when you live righteous, you affect people. When you don't live righteous, then God would say, well, you're not living the way I want you to live. I can't bless you either. It's amazing what you can do being one person, praying, living, and doing what is right. I think that Lincoln got it right when he said that he wanted, when they asked him, are you wanting God to be on your side? And he said, no, I want to be on God's side. And there's a little bit of difference, isn't there? He stood at Gettysburg, and if you've ever been at Gettysburg, you can see the valley down there where they were all shot, and just kind of imagine all that up a cemetery ridge, and you think of the thousands, 20, 30,000, whatever it was, that died at Gettysburg. But he said that this nation under God shall have a new birth. Lincoln understood this nation depended on God, and that we should stand for God as we ought to do that. And Eisenhower, when I was about the 6th grade, said, we need to put that in our flag motto when we say to the flag, one nation under God. There is one nation under God, and that needs to be a concept. I'm not a white American. I'm not a Whale American from Wales. I'm not a German. I guess I got some of all that in my background. I don't look upon myself as being a German American. I look upon myself as being an American. Same as you. I came here, our grandparents came here, and they came here to be part of this land, to build a land, to build freedom. And I am just a melting pot. If you melt something together, you don't know, well, where did it all go? It all went to one piece. If we had that concept, I'm an American. And I need to stand up for America. And if the part of America that's not being treated right, I need to stand up for that. And there not to be any division. One nation is under God. It's so important. When you travel about, you have all kinds of wonderful things that you can see. There's a little lady that is a cleaning lady at the hospital, and we've made kind of friendship, I guess. And so she said one day, "You're awfully tall." I said, "You're awfully short." And she is. She's just, I don't know, she's 5 foot even. Didn't hurt her any. So she laughs about it. And last time I went in and get my pump out, she came into the room and we just talked. She wanted to talk. I don't know how many people talk to the cleaning lady. I don't know, but she grew up in Wyoming. Well, I'm from Montana. That was very fascinating. And talk about the beautiful land of Wyoming. Now, if you've been through Wyoming, you just shake your head. Where is the beauty of Wyoming? I think somebody came on the train the other day and said the most wonderful thing was that we got to go through Nebraska in the dark. Well, that doesn't make Melanie too happy, but she gets along all right. But Nebraska and Wyoming. So she talked about growing up in this little town, and she said her sister had ruined a garden. There was an old man that had a little candy store up on a hill. This is by Rock Springs. And he had built his entire house out of rocks. He found his backyard. If you've ever been to Wyoming and Rock Springs, you don't quite understand that you can get enough rocks in your backyard to build a good-sized house. 2-story house now I'm talking about. So the sister went over and ruined his garden. Some, like kids do, they mess around, and so she got into trouble. And she said I was about 4 or 5, and I'd walk up the hill and get some penny candy. If you knew anything about those days, for a penny, you get a sack full of candy. So she said, I guess my sister got into trouble. He said, yeah, she kind of ruined my garden. The little girl said, what's a garden? She'd never seen a garden before because there's rocks everywhere. You couldn't grow anything. But he lifted enough rocks out of the dirt to make a place you could have a garden. He went to that garden and he reached down and he pulled something out of the ground, and he said, you know what this is? And she said, it's a carrot. She had no idea carrots grew in the ground. She'd never seen a garden before. He got her some potatoes. Well, I didn't know potatoes were in the ground either, and some onions and stuff, and put it in a bag. And said, here, take it home, have a good salad. But she could hardly lift the bag, so he picked her up and put her in the car and drove her down the hill and took her home. And, you know, we live in abundance. It's different from one place to the rocks. He said, you sit there at night and you watch the Mustangs go on the bluff above you. It's the most beautiful sight. He said, my husband and I went back a couple of years ago, and there are the yellow roses. If I even have smelled them, he said, there's nothing that smells like a yellow rose in Wyoming. He said, they'd open the window and that breeze would come in with that scent, and, you know, it was just wonderful. That's Wyoming. That's not even Iowa. I'm just telling you, we live in a wonderful land. And then Colorado mountains and the ocean. And we live in an abundant land, and we just take it for granted. Oh, God, thank you for all you've done for us. And above all, the freedoms that we have to live in such a land. 572 will be our song we'll close with today. 572, America, the beautiful. It is beautiful. And notice the thing that the songwriter said, God has shed his grace on you. That's where we got it. It wasn't just the Pilgrims. It wasn't the Democrats, the Republicans, and the Congress and all that built America. It was God. He's where we got our blessing from, and we need to thank him primarily for that. Let's stand and sing the first stanza, 572. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Leonard, would you lead us, please?